Greetings, non-feminist men and women of the world. Today is Monday, the 28th of September, 2015. Welcome to episode number 64 of the Vanguard Report. This is where we set aside traditional constructs, categories, and terminologies and learn to think in new ways. Always on the frontier, always on the cutting edge. I don't know about all you, but I'm about ready for a radical perestroika of the entire so-called men's rights discourse and nomenclature. All of the lingo and all of the categories and taxonomies and ways of thinking that we've inherited over the years. Sometimes I feel like I just want to run a bulldozer through all of it and sweep it out of the road so we can create a new path for ourselves, new area where we can walk and move forward and do some serious traveling. Sometimes I think we need to update our entire way of thinking and the language that goes with it in order to better suit the nature of the changing political topography. And yes, it is always changing. It's always morphing and slip-sliding around like Proteus. And we got to be equally fast to stay on top of that game. But I'm not going to talk about that right now. Right now, consider the following. Feminism as a thing is separate from the issues and talking points which occupy it. Most people don't realize the importance of this. There is feminism, and then there is the stuff that feminism talks about, and those are very, very, very different things. You don't want to mix them up. On the one side, you have feminist issues and talking points. On the other side, you have, well, feminism per se, feminism qua feminism. And yes, these are two very distinctly different things. They intersect in conversation, sort of, but they are very different things. For example, women's suffrage is not feminism. That's right, it's not feminism. Women's suffrage is not feminism. It is a feminist issue, a feminist talking point. It's something that feminists love to go on and on about when they want to prove the utility and virtue and goodness of feminism. They talk about something that happened 100 years ago, and they exaggerate the drama factor surrounding that whole issue. But still, bottom line, women's suffrage is not feminism. It's just something feminism talks about, and it's something that feminism likes to claim as a feminist victory, something that feminism did. And that's debatable too, but not now. Okay, moving along, the pay gap, or wage gap, as some would say, that's not feminism. It is only a feminist talking point. It's something the feminists love to rattle on and on about, but it is not in or of itself feminism, qua feminism. Another example would be so-called rape culture that they're making such a whoop-de-doo about nowadays, this phony thing, this illusionary dragon that the feminists want to slay. It's not feminism. It is a feminist talking point. It's something that feminists talk about, but it's not feminism. Okay? So a standard feminist trick is to make the conversation, any conversation, center upon or swirl around issues and talking points. Not about feminism, but issues and talking points. And this is for a reason. It is because the feminists don't want feminism per se to become the subject of conversation. That's right. They don't want feminism to become the subject of conversation. You think feminists like to talk about feminism, strictly and narrowly about feminism? No, they don't. They want to talk about anything but feminism. They want to talk about the things that feminists talk about, but they don't want to talk about feminism. And even when they seem to be talking about feminism, they're still talking around feminism. They're leading your mind astray from the main central critical truths about feminism. In other words, they're not really talking about feminism. Feminists themselves want to keep feminism under wraps. Some feminists genuinely don't know what feminism is, just as many non-feminists don't yet know what feminism is, although we have to educate them. But whether it's out of ignorance, lack of knowledge, or whether it's out of a deliberate effort to sidetrack and sidestep, either way, it's the same outcome. Feminism doesn't get talked about. Feminism as an object of understanding, something you can point to, something you can analyze and take apart and put together again and twirl around and bounce around. That feminism is not something that typically comes up for discussion. And here I'm talking about critical thinking on the subject of feminism. Feminism preserves itself by not talking about itself, but by talking about the stuff that it likes to talk about and getting everybody else talking about it and getting everybody else swirling around the central singularity of truth of what feminism is, but never quite going there, never seeing the thing for what it is, never digging right into the kernel of it. Feminists don't want feminism per se to become the subject of conversation. They don't want it to become the focal point. They don't want it to become the thing which every critical thinker between here and Kalamazoo is drilling down upon. They don't want that. They don't want the growth of free, unconstrained, critical thinking on the subject of feminism to be spreading through the culture far and wide. They don't want that. That's the last thing they want. And that's just the thing we need to encourage. It's what we like to call spreading the red dye. It's kind of like taking the red pill, but it's sort of a reverse inside-out version of taking the red pill. Instead of you taking the pill, you're just preparing the essence of the pill in the form of a red tincture, which you are injecting into the culture, into the cultural atmosphere. So gradually things look more and more red. Everybody is taking the red pill, whether they know it or not. That is spreading the red dye. I think that's the model we need to be working with. Spread the red dye, folks. Anyway, it has been said that the best way to handle an attention whore is to give them the kind of attention that they don't want. And so it is with feminism. Talking about feminism per se is the kind of attention that feminism doesn't want. Feminism wants to be the center of attention, the center of the conversation, but it doesn't want to be the subject of the conversation, if you see the difference. Feminism wants to control the conversation, but it doesn't want to be the conversation. You follow me? Now, this is important stuff. You ought to remember it and make it relevant to your counter-feminist practice. Don't just say, that's interesting, and then forget about it. That's a waste of everybody's time. You should memorize this, share it with others, and let it inform all of your thinking and doing. We give away a lot of goodies like this on the Vanguard Report. The Vanguard Report is not an entertainment project, you know. This is not Hollywood. Anyway, I am Phil Bogan. I am your host for this episode of the Vanguard Report. This is episode number 64, if I didn't mention that already. And my fellow host, man of Canada, true son of the Alberta Prairie, Nick Redding of Edmonton, Alberta, couldn't be with us today, so it's just me flying solo. Yeah, not like I've never done this before. You will want to go check out Nick's website, which is mensrightsedmonton.com. You will want to check out the Men's Rights Edmonton YouTube channel. And you'll want to check out Men's Rights Edmonton on Twitter. Unfortunately, I don't have the Twitter account name right now, or I would give it to you. But check out mensrightsedmonton.com. Check out the Men's Rights Edmonton YouTube channel. Oh, and by the way, when you go to the Men's Rights Edmonton website, you will find contact information. That is an email address. Don't be afraid to get a hold of Nick if you are in Edmonton, if you are passing through Edmonton, or if you know somebody who is in Edmonton or might be passing through Edmonton, who might want to physically, in real life, hang out with Nick Redding and talk about, well, matters concerning the non-feminist revolution in general. You'll find the contact information somewhere. Look around on the Men's Rights Edmonton blog. Thank you very much. Next, I have an announcement, somewhat on a personal note. I don't like to mix the personal with the political, but sometimes you can't help it a little bit. Well, I'm not mixing it. I might be leaving the Vanguard Report as your host starting next week. I might be. Reason being that I might have to go off the internet for a while, and I won't bore you with the details, but this is still in the air. Whether I will stay on the air or be leaving the air, that's still in the air. I might not, in which case I will be back again for episode number 64. Otherwise, it'll be just Nick. Nick is going to have to wing it and be the man of the Vanguard Report. And if I am to be taking this little sabbatical, I can't say how long it will be. Hopefully not too long. But I'm just putting this on the public corkboard, on the public kiosk, for everybody to whom it may concern. And I've said that hopefully I will be back. I think there's a good chance I will be back again next week and continue to be here every week doing the Vanguard Report. Anyway, so much for that. Let's move along. We were going to talk about what was I going to talk about here? Yes, the strict anti-feminist philosophy. The strict anti-feminist task force. What is the strict anti-feminist task force? Well, it's a dream of mine. I have a dream. The strict anti-feminist task force is just a informal movement, if you want to call it, of people who are dedicated pretty much primarily and exclusively to the task of bringing down feminism, bringing about the social death of feminism, by which we mean that feminism, the feminist worldview, I should say, would collapse and cease to be hegemonic within the culture. It wouldn't rule the roost anymore. It would not be in everybody's hearts and minds and brains. It would not dominate the institutions and dominate the atmosphere and dominate all conversations and overshadow everything like it does now. That is the state of affairs that we wish to bring to a close. And the strict anti-feminist task force is simply a group, a movement, call it what you will, dedicated narrowly and shall I say, specialistically to that particular task, and is willing to take upon themselves the knowledges and disciplines that go along with that task. You know, it's nice to make your life simple. You know, if you're just going to go out there and chop wood all day long, that's really simple. It's hard work, you know, chopping wood. You ever done it? I've done it. It's fun. It's very enjoyable. You know, you just concentrate on one thing, chop, 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 and you got time to think. So, the strict anti-feminist task force. Anti-feminist, meaning it is opposed to feminism. Strict, meaning, well, strict or pure, or that's pretty much all it's about. It is that as opposed to various other issues that we have bitten off over the years and attempted to chew in far too much complexity and far too little order. Strict anti-feminism, well, we're just strictly here to take out feminism. And by feminism, I mean feminism as we define it. Certainly not as any feminist would define it. As you know, as I said earlier, when a feminist talks about feminism, well, they're not really talking about feminism, because the one thing above all that they wish to avoid is talking about feminism. Because to truly talk about feminism, one must talk the truth about feminism. But the truth about feminism simply will not bear looking into. It is shameful. It is repulsive to look upon. And no feminist wants the truth about feminism to come out on the table. And, you know, if you're not talking about the truth of feminism, then you are full stop not talking about feminism. You're talking about something else. So I would say part of the task of the strict anti-feminist task force is to make feminism the subject of conversation. And that means sweeping aside, bulldozing out of the way the feminist narrative, the feminist way of talking about things, the feminist discourse, feminist control over the language. You get the idea. All of it. The whole damn pizza. The whole damn tamale. All of it. That's the strict anti-feminist task force. With the rise of mainstream anti-feminism, as opposed to, you know, quote unquote, the men's rights movement, this is a project, I think, ripe for realization. There's a few people out there who will hear of this idea and think, hey, that sounds like something. So, yeah, we can have feminism on the ropes in a relatively short time if we followed a disciplined plan. And it's that disciplined plan that I would like to discuss a little bit today. I'd like to flesh it out a little bit and maybe hit some of the key points. As I said earlier, I think I said it's all about spreading the red dye. And spreading the red dye means awakening the collective mind to the truth about feminism and how feminism is deployed through the culture as a social organism that we call the femplex. Spreading the red dye, it's an ambient thing. Anybody remember that? Going ambient, becoming ambient? Yeah. Spreading the red dye into the cultural ambient. Taking the red pill, but in an inverted manner. So for a start, we need to keep the subject narrow. We need to stick to one subject, or else a narrow range of subjects and ideas. And, you know, you talk about too much, it slows you down. It's like the difference between having a ship which has a narrow hull and a sharp prow and it slices through the water, versus having a big old wide barge that goes slowly through the water. Okay. We need to have a narrow ship that slices through the water and cuts through the waves and sails fast at 30 knots. And we do that here in the realm of rhetoric and propaganda the information war. We do that by limiting the range of subjects. And not only limiting the range of subjects, but practicing message discipline. There are the subjects that we talk about, and then there is the way we frame the discussion of those subjects. And that latter, the framing of the discussion, gets into what may be termed message discipline. Put out a consistent message. Don't let your message or your signal get contaminated by somebody else's noise. Decide what your message, pardon me, decide what your message signal is, and then signal boost. And the question of how to make the signal boosting happen is a separate discussion. The point is that it needs to happen. Let's see, I got a few points here on my very, very sketchy program notes. I am winging this little speech, by the way. I'm not reading hardly any of it off of the script. I just got a few little notes, and that's it. For a start, we need to eschew the androcentric narrative voice. And that's a new bit of terminology. Can anybody guess what that means just right off the block? The androcentric narrative voice. Some of you cerebral eggheads out there might twig to that right away. Androcentric narrative voice. What is the androcentric narrative voice? Well, it's a narrative voice, a voice which is voicing a narrative, and we have the qualifying term androcentric here. So I think we can make a pretty shrewd guess that it means a narrative voice which is, or a narrative which is androcentrically voiced. And androcentric means what? Andro means male, and centric means centered. So we come out with the male-centered narrative voice. That's the androcentric narrative voice. Yep. The androcentric narrative voice is, here we go, it is a style of political expression currently employed by many anti-feminist males, where the speaker seems to be communicating from the standpoint of, quote unquote, a man among men, or us dudes, or us blokes, as they might say in England or Australia. Okay. Another name for the androcentric narrative voice would be the male clubhouse perspective. And I must say the androcentric narrative voice is and has historically been for many years integral to men's rights discourse. What we have known, the classic way of talking that which has grown up over the years, which I think we need to run a bulldozer through so we can learn to talk in a different way and forge a different path, a different road to roam. The androcentric narrative voice stands in contrast, stark contrast to what we like to call the mountaintop view, the field marshal's view, well, basically the view which is taken by strict anti-feminism. Androcentric narrative voice, I mean, you hear guys talking all the time, and it's always about men, us men, we men, us dudes. You can tell that the person is speaking from a male standpoint, himself as the male subject in a community of other men and looking out at the world through a male tinted lens. Now, you might ask, what's wrong with that? Well, nothing wrong with that. The question is more, what is the political efficiency of that? Is there a reason to sometimes avoid this kind of narrative voice? And I think there is. In the complicated and tangled and increasingly complicated, tangled politics or political landscape that we now have, we need to have different message streams going out there. What we've got now is a chaos of different messages, a train wreck, a demolition derby. And this is the problem that has dogged us from the very beginning. We never thought about our message and our message discipline from the early days, never planned this out, never got together in a committee, never drafted a bulkhead statement of any kind. None of that. What we got is a chaotic mess. That is what the so-called quote unquote men's rights movement is. In terms of the propaganda stream that it puts out, in terms of the message that it puts out, it is a chaotic mess. It is a tangle. It's a demolition derby. It's a train wreck, okay? And no wonder there is a, image management problem going on here. Remarkable progress has been made in spite of that. More and more people are coming on board, but the question is, when I say coming on board what? And that's still not clear. It's still a big old tangle. Wouldn't it be nice if you could make your life simple and just sweep away 90% of that and just say, hey, we're here to do a job. We're here to do a job, and in this case, the job is to take out feminism. So that's where strict anti-feminism comes in. All right. Now, where was I? Am I starting to lose my place in my rant here, the speech that I never really wrote? That's the androcentric narrative voice. And the androcentric narrative voice, like it or not, this is reality, folks, but the androcentric narrative voice turns off and turns away a lot of people, and it brands you and earmarks you. It would be more efficient to the narrow task of taking down feminism if we avoid, stay away from the androcentric narrative voice. Doesn't mean that we never talk about men's issues. Doesn't mean we never talk about feminist wrongs, which are mainly wrongs done to men. We talk about that all the time, but we simply don't talk about it from within what might appear to be or sound like the male clubhouse. That's the thing we avoid. The androcentric narrative voice. I don't use the androcentric narrative voice. Maybe I've done it in the past, but more recently I've become aware of it and I've been weeding it out when I write, when I make a speech like I'm doing right now. I don't talk about men's rights like I am a man, although I am a man. I make it sound like I'm just a person who is not a feminist. I try to take a more universal tone. Like, this is all of us. We're up against this thing called feminism. Feminism is doing a lot of damage, doing pernicious things, poisoning the world in so many ways, and it's not helping anybody. And yes, among other things, it's doing bad things to men. But you got to understand that when bad things are done to men, which are half the human race, when bad things are done to men, the repercussions will spread and spread. The fallout will spread and blow everywhere. So yeah, feminism's war against men has bad consequences for everybody, for the entire social ecology in which all of us, men and women alike, are equally embedded. We can't get away from it. Our fates are intertwined. As I love to say, you can't poison half of a well. Can you imagine dropping some strychnine into the left half of the well, and you say to the people, oh, don't worry, just draw your water out of the right half of the well and you'll be okay? No, not so much. It doesn't sound like anybody would be very impressed by that kind of argument, and I know I'm not. No, what feminism does to the human social ecology is poison for all concerned. Poison for all concerned. You may drop it in the male half of the well, but I'm sorry, but the female half of the well is going to be affected. Of course, You know how the feminists operate. They will come back and try to blame it on men. They blame the consequences of feminism. They project their own guilt onto men. The things that feminism has done to the world, the poisonous things that feminism has done, the meddlings and the machinations and the wreckings and spoilings, all the stuff that feminism has done, the whole course of feminist innovation, when the predictable consequences begin to arise from all of this, what do the feminists do? They turn and point the finger at men. What's wrong with men? Why are men so angry? Why are men so threatened and insecure? Most of this bad shit, this terrible stuff that's happening, this disruption of life and human understanding and human trust and all of it is directly or indirectly the fault of feminism. Very little of it is the fault of any man individually or men collectively. And I'm going to stick my neck out here. Very little of it is the fault of women individually or collectively. It's the fault of some women individually or collectively, namely the women who espouse feminism and the useful idiots and pack mules who help them out. They share some part of the burden. But then again, look on the male side, and plenty of men bear an equal, similar kind of burden on that side as well. But feminism really has done nobody any favors. It's just spread too many lies and got us so we don't know up from down and left from right anymore. We haven't even got our feet on the ground anymore. That's what feminism does, folks. It spreads lies and poisons everybody. Turns men and women against each other. Turns men and men against each other. Turns women and women against each other. It creates a big old human mess. And that's why feminism has got to go. Feminism is a thing, a social organism, a distributed phenomenon spread out through this social ecology, through this structure of institutions, through the hierarchy of power, going all the way up to the United Nations. That's what I call global. And it goes from there and it goes right down to the inside of your head. And I must confess, maybe even a little bit to the inside of my head. Sometimes I have to introspect and ask myself if I am as deprogrammed as I think I am. Sometimes I will catch myself out, thinking something or saying something, and then I have to stop and say, wait a minute, Philo Bogan, you got some deprogramming work to do there, buddy. But I think I'm doing pretty good. All right. Now let's look back at this little script, this little text file I got in front of me here, and start reading off of it again. The androcentric narrative voice. Did I do that yet? Yeah, I got past the androcentric narrative voice. Strict anti-feminism. Yep. It's the task force focused on taking down feminism, bringing about the collapse of the feminist worldview throughout the culture. The basic inversion is men's rights aims at helping men, and it attacks feminism as ancillary to that project. The whole orientation is men. We men. Hey, brother man, let's do something for men. Speaking as a man, speaking from the male clubhouse. Strict anti-feminism aims at attacking feminism. Watch the inversion here. Strict anti-feminism aims at attacking feminism, and it uses men's rights as ancillary to that project. Okay? Men's rights aims to help men and attacks feminism as a way of helping men. Strict anti-feminism aims to bring down feminism and brings in the subject of men's rights as ancillary to the project of taking down feminism. Now, here is where we expand upon the idea of men's rights versus feminism's wrongs. Men's rights takes a men's rights approach which goes hand in hand with the androcentric narrative voice, the male clubhouse perspective. Strict anti-feminism takes a feminism's wrongs approach. Feminism has wronged us, all of us, at least we who are not feminists. Um, I suppose in the higher scheme of things, feminism has wronged itself. Feminists have wronged themselves. They shot themselves in the foot. They poisoned themselves too. They're going to suffer the consequences of feminism too, just as well as anybody else. And woe unto them when the mask is ripped away and we all expose feminism, expose them and see them for what they are. There's going to be an awful lot of people saying, no, no, I'm not a feminist. I was never.
Oh, we seem to have lost Fiedelbogen there. Oh boy. We're going to see what we can do to try to get him back as soon as possible, folks. Oh boy, it looks like Fiedelbogen may have dropped offline altogether. Folks, we're going to go ahead and give him just a little bit longer here. Hopefully, he will be able to reset his internet connection and come back with us. Okay, just got news from Fiedelbogen. His computer did crash. He is coming back.
Hello, James.
All right, glad you're back. We are live. Go ahead
Yes.
and keep rolling.
Okay. Well, I got to find the point where I stopped rolling so I can pick up with the rolling again.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
oh boy. What was I talking about? Trouble with being on a roll and then you're suddenly, jerked off of your roll. It's not always the easiest thing to get back onto your roll again. But I think I can manage. First, I got to open up a text file here. All of my browser tabs, which I had lined up for the web links that I was going to talk about later, they're all gone. But that's not the end of the world. Okay, now I've got this on a 64 gigabyte thumb drive. So I got to open that up and scroll through all these folders here. Oh, what do I got? Okay, I got one called Writings. Open that. And a folder called Ambient Edge, which, by the way, was the original name that we were going to give to the Vanguard Report, the Ambient Edge. Anyway, open up the Ambient Edge folder. And here are all the old Vanguard episodes going back to number 1 and up to 64, where we're at now. Can I find it? It's got to be in there somewhere. There it is, episode 64. All right. I've got that open. I've got my Chrome browser open. Now I can continue. Let's try to find the place in my notes where I left off so I can pick up the thread. Centric narrative voice, strict anti-feminism. Oh, we were talking about feminist wrongs versus men's rights. Strict anti-feminism aims at attacking feminism and uses men's rights as ancillary to that, as supplementary to that, as a device or a technique toward the end of promoting men's rights and promoting men's interests and helping men, which is fine, which is a noble thing, and I have no problem with that. But I'm thinking here like a more like a practical politician. And this is a multi-pronged fork that we are driving at the enemy here. Not just two-pronged. In the long run, I hope to see any number of prongs on that fork, but we'll get to that later. Strict anti-feminism aims at attacking feminism and uses men's rights as ancillary to that project. So we have men's rights, which attacks feminism as part of helping men. This is one way of thinking. And we have strict anti-feminism, which helps men as a way of attacking feminism. Because, really by the end of the day, these two projects, helping men and attacking feminism, they are one in the same. Okay. You can see them as two sides of the same pancake, right? I mean, it's a mighty thin pancake that doesn't have two sides, right? Two sides of the same pancake. Another way of looking at it, It's the reversible coat. It's like having a coat that you can turn out one way or turn out the other way, and you can wear it both ways. I see anti-feminism slash men's rights as being so much integrated with each other and so much a unity with each other that it's like you can turn that coat any way you want, and the show side will be either anti-feminist oriented or it will be men's rights oriented, and you've got the other side there, but more to the inside. But it's all there, and it's all a matter of show because this is politics, and politics, my friends, is 95% theater. It's 95% show. Let's face it. Okay. What you talk about, the message you put out, the signal you put out, how you boost that signal, and so on, how you are perceived by the broad constituency and by your opposition, all of it. Well, these things all need to be taken into consideration. It's all part of the game. And I know that rubs some people the wrong way to hear that, but I'm trying to be a hard headed realist and a pragmatist here, okay? Because that's just how I roll. I I try not to look at the world through sentimental filters or illusions if I can help it. Not that I lack ideals. I am at heart an idealist, but I am a pragmatic idealist. If I had to describe myself, that's, I think, how I would describe myself. Okay, enough of the personal. Let's get back to the political. Strict anti-feminism. So, it's that reversible coat. You know, just think of me as a person who wears that coat with the anti-feminist side out for show. Now, really, you cannot separate helping men from hurting feminism, from taking down feminism, from bringing about the collapse of feminism as a social construct, as a governing paradigm. You Feminism is about increasing the power of women. And there are many ways of doing that, and hurting men, damaging men, compromising the well being of men, limiting the power of men, all of these things. Nick,
Sorry, guys. Sorry, I got caught up in something else. I apologize for being late.
well, okay. We're talking about, I don't know if you caught any of the monologue here in the last couple of minutes or not, but anyway, we're talking about, we got some audio issues there, I think, on your end, Nick. I'm hearing an echo of my voice.
I'll turn off my mic when you talk.
Okay. I was talking about the parable of the reversible coat, and we were talking about how anti-feminism, you know, working against feminism, trying to bring about the collapse and downfall of feminism, can really not be separated from helping men. Those two things are so much a unity with each other that you really can't separate them. And yet there are plenty of people out there who perversely insist upon making a separation between those things. There are feminists who want to make that separation, and they have their reasons for doing it. And then there are non-feminists who also want to make that separation, and not just any particular group of non-feminists, but several different groups of non-feminists um, want to make a artificial distinction between helping men and attacking feminism, and they have their reasons, which are different from the reasons that the feminists have. And I'm not going to, parse any of that out right now, but I'm just going to draw it to your attention because it is worthy of thinking about. It's important. But really, I mean, you do anything to help men, then you are attacking the power of feminism. You are eroding the power of feminism, because feminism seeks to weaken and compromise men by whatever means. And when I say that, when I talk in that vein, I am not talking from the androcentric narrative perspective. I'm not saying that as a man. I am saying that as a philosophical observer of the human condition. This is just the way the world works. And I'm just pointing this out, drawing this to your attention, for the purpose of sharing information. I'm working with information, because working with information is the bottom line, the foundation of everything we do. All of our operations, one way or another, we are working with information. So, as a strict anti-feminist, a person of the strict anti-feminist task force, I wear that reversible coat with the non-feminist, counter-feminist, opposed to feminism side as the show side, the part that the world sees, and the men's rights side is tucked away more to the inside, meaning I don't talk about that, and I don't use the androcentric narrative voice. Anyway, it just really irks me to see people talking about men's rights and anti-feminism like they're two separate things. They are not two separate things.
Yeah.
However, Nick, you want to say something?
Yeah, like before I did any of my before I started men's rights Edmonton, I did youth activism. Right, and I would stand on the street corner with a shirt that said "Foreskins are awesome," and I would tell people about the dangers of infant circumcision. And I did that largely because I knew that that was an issue that if you brought light to that, it would if you brought light to the fact that men are not, the fact that infant males are not given the same legal consideration as infant females, that would in itself undermine feminism.
It's anti-male bias from the very earliest stages of life.
Yeah, and I didn't I didn't couch it in terms of poor men or feminism or feminism ignores this. I didn't mention feminism at all,
In other words, you did not use the androcentric narrative voice.
or the anti-feminist voice actually.
Well, okay, that's an approach. I mean, you don't have to use the anti-feminist voice at all. Spreading the red dye can entail a whole range of operations, not all of which need to be anti-feminist, at least not overtly, although that may be your agenda. But if you remember that what we're doing is working with information and, more to the point, spreading information, anything that will undermine the feminist power structure in the realm of information can fall within the compass of our work. And Nick, anything else you wanted to? You were saying something there, Nick, were you?
No, no, just to chime in there about what you like to supplement what you're saying.
Oh, yeah.
Um, uh, Again, like if you go out, if you talk about, if you start a campaign to talk about male child soldiers and only, like, I mean, I don't think that there are female child soldiers. I could be wrong about that.
Well, you've got some of the what they call the Peshmerga, the Kurdish women who go out and really they're guerrilla fighters. They put themselves out on the line. I mean, there are female suicide bombers, but yeah, generally that's true.
But are they child? Are they kids?
Now, there you go. Sorry, I overlooked that part of it. I forgot about that part of it. I don't know of any female child soldiers.
Yeah. So if you were to go out and talk about child soldiers and only child soldiers, without because whenever you have a campaign about child soldiers, feminists always try to throw in the sex slavery of little girls, and that is an issue, right? But it's you've got things that just deal with girls, but not no things that deal just with boys. So if you just deal with issues of child soldiers in third world countries, that is a strictly male. There's a problem had by boys.
Mhm.
Um, and if you talk about that, that breaks the feminist narrative in the same way my foreskin activism would break the feminist narrative. And you don't have to say word one about feminism.
Yes, yes. So, as you all see, there's just so many ways you can go at this. But the idea is you're breaking the feminist narrative. Breaking the feminist narrative. That's a good way of putting it. Good phrase right there. Breaking the feminist narrative. And there's so many ways you could break the feminist narrative. Just information that goes contrary to the feminist narrative. Somebody hears that information in a memorable way, we hope. It enters their brain and stays there and grows like a seed. And then at some point down the road, that information is going to hook up with some other information that somebody else came along and planted. And then the cumulative effect will be a growing realization in a generally counter-feminist direction. It's this slow build up and propagation of information, carefully chosen information. That is our work in a nutshell. That's what we do. We work with information. That's what we do. We work with information. And working with information is a pretty broad concept when you consider that what is the universe? Everything that is information. So, quite understandably, everything we do comes under the umbrella of working with information. Anyway, so yes, these two aspects of breaking feminism, bringing down feminism, and helping men, you can't separate them. You do anything to compromise or to break down feminism, that's going to help men. It's going to make the world a better, healthier, happier place in which to be male. On the other hand, if you go out and help men, you open up a men's shelter, a men's center, open up a men's club on your campus, anything like that, well, yeah, it's going to compromise feminism. It's going to help to break feminism because you're helping men. You know, the interests of men and the interest of feminism as a movement, feminism as an ideology, those two things, that is a conflict of interest. You know, one rises where the other one falls and vice versa. Now, but the point I'm making here, now let's move along a little bit. Although these two things, breaking feminism and helping men, are inseparable by the end of the day, yet there is a reason to separate them. And this may seem like a bit of a paradox, but not so much when we dig into it a little bit further. What I'm talking about here is in the theater of politics, this realm where we are working with information. And politics is all about, herding and pushing information around in different ways and making that information go into people's heads and making things light up in people's heads in a way that will be to your advantage, to get people to think in a certain way and then begin to act in a certain way. So all variations on working with information. So we're talking about here in the theater of politics, the perception of the public, both friend and foe and neutral public alike. The perception of anti-feminism and men's rights as being two separate things. These are two separate task forces who need to work on the problem from two different lines of specialization. They need not only to work upon it from two separate lines of specialization, but they need to have this seen and known, as I said a minute ago, by the world in general. We need to have the world in general see anti-feminism as a distinct and separate movement from men's rights. And I think right now we are in the early stages of making that separation, and we need to encourage that separation more and more. But at the same time, we have to realize that these are not factions that are at war with each other. They shouldn't be. Some people might think they are. Some idiots, let me say, might think they are, but they are at root not opposed to each other, not enemies, and they shouldn't be. But I think that we need to at least make the separation in the public eye, which is like the top part of the plant when it comes out into the sunlight. And you look below the soil, the root system all joins together, and it's the same thing. But here in the theater of politics, it's about perception. It's about, yes, regrettably, labeling things sometimes. And it's about sending out a different signal on one side or the other that will each respectively cut through the noise in a way that the signal is clearly heard and known as a thing unto itself. boost your signal over the background noise so that everybody knows that your signal is your signal and that your message is your message. And as the opposition grows, as the non-feminist revolution becomes more and more organized and more conscious, we're going to see a lot of different people, different groups, different ideological perspectives working on the problem from various different angles. And that's good. Sometimes these different groups may appear to be fighting with each other. Well, maybe they are fighting with each other, but I mean, that's not to be avoided. I mean, let's face it, we live in an imperfect world. Human beings fight with each other. Even people on the same side fight with each other, regrettable though that may be. So much for strict anti-feminism versus men's rights. I hope I made my point clear there.
Well, yeah, you have, and like I said on the last episode, Paul Elan recently released a statement on ABFM saying that they weren't going to be going after feminism as much. They were going to change their focus to gynocentrism,
Well,
and citing specifically that that people like what's his name.
What is his name? I don't know.
Sargon of Akkad and Milo Yiannopoulos and a lot of other YouTubers who are not men's rights activists are kicking the crap out of feminism. And
everybody should do what they do best.
yeah, and
I don't think they're. I mean, pardon me. I don't think those people are kicking the crap out of feminism near as well as it could be or should be. To be quite honest.
well, I think I would. Yeah, I would like to see more of that. But I mean, you look at Vernaculus, you look at all of the rationalists. Goodfella. I mean, like there's a lot of people. Like anti-feminism is taking off. Like there was that Flash Gifts cartoon about Jessica the feminazi. There's large sections of the atheist community, such as the Amazing Atheist and Thunderfoot and Psi 10 Atheist, who they make fun of. They take they take the footage from MRAs of people like Big Red, and they make fun of them.
According to the feminists, all those people are just quote unquote MRAs.
Yeah, and that's going to bite them in the ass. Grouping everyone.
The whole non-feminist sector like it's just one continual mass of the same material from end to end.
Yeah, that's going to bite them in the ass, and it's going to make MRA. It's going to make people see. It's like with Gamergate. When Gamergate happened, they tried to tell everyone that Gamergate hated women too, and so all these Gamergaters who formerly thought that MRAs were a bunch of misogynists, once they saw that the same tactics were being applied to them, then they were like, "Oh, MRAs aren't so bad after all."
The funny thing about the word MRA is nobody really has properly explained what it means.
Okay, I'll do that right now.
Okay, have a go, man.
Okay, it means men's rights activist or men's rights advocate, and as TLDR
the advocate interpretation myself.
And even as TLDR pointed out, even Steve Shives would qualify as an MRA because he advocated, however minimally, for the rights of men. He in one of TLDR's excellent Steve Shives videos.
How many Steve Shives videos did TLDR make anyway?
Two or three, but they're all great. And what he did was he took what, because the thing is what you're saying now about feminists grouping everyone into who disagrees with them as being MRAs. What guys like Steve Shives do is they talk about guys who quote unquote claim not to be MRAs, but have every single same talking point as MRAs.
Does Steve Shives ever define what the MRA talking point is?
No, I don't think he does. No, I don't think he does. But TLDR pointed out that yeah, people don't want to identify as men's rights activists because it's or men's rights advocates because it's a thought terminating cliche, and even if they say something like what Steve Shives did in that video, that like yes, uh, there are concerns faced by men, then they'll be lumped in with those MRAs. But the thing is, if you advocate for men's rights, as even Steve Shives did in the video where he's making fun of MRAs, then you are a men's rights advocate, just like anybody who picks their nose is a nose picker.
Technically, yes, that is where we get into the difference between a label and a descriptor. Okay, as a descriptor, you are performing actions X, Y, and Z, which is not the same as a label. This is semantics here. I'm not going to get into it, but it is important.
So that's the thing is that when feminists even feminists can be MRAs if they say if they when they come up it doesn't
They
even
say
matter
that
if it's
men do have issues.
yeah and
Feminism,
I mean, they're
even
being
Big Red was an MRA when she says feminism is working on it.
yeah they're being sanctimonious and superficial and all that, but they are advocating for men.
Well, yeah, in a way. I mean, just all talk, all talk and no walk. So, oh man, where was the thread? I lost the thread. What was I talking about here? Yes, feminism's wrongs. Feminism's wrongs are the flip side of men's rights. Because you talk about feminism's wrongs, you're talking about wrongs against men, which again in turn comes down to violations of men's rights. So you talk about feminism's wrongs, you're within orbit of talking about men's rights as well. But you got to approach the problem from all these different angles. That's my opinion. Now, when you talk about feminism's wrongs, I'm sorry, Nick, you're going to say something?
Yeah, like when I talk to Karen, she says that yeah, there are aspects of being a men's advocate that are compassionate in their basis. She has sons and stuff like that. But really, her big thing is just that this is bullshit. This is not true.
Meaning what, feminism in general?
Yeah, the feminist narrative, and that's really what drives her. Is just like saying, no, you're fucking wrong. Stop lying.
That's what
Um,
drives me. That's what's driven me ever since I first got my head plugged into this game.
yeah, and that's and when someone wrote an article like Christina Hoff Sommers saying meet the feminist who's sticking up for men, she said, well, I don't think of it as sticking up for men. I think of it as sticking up for the truth. And so when that was
Which will
uh,
shed innumerable blessings upon men.
yeah, that's rationalism, right? Just the belief that the truth is the most valuable thing. The more people know the truth, the more people are going to be helped. Um, and in women too. I mean, I don't think that any of I think that feminist bullshit, while it does help women in certain ways, it really turns them into children in many others.
It's like junk food, it tastes good and it keeps your stomach filled for a while, but in the long run it poisons you and kills you.
Yeah, and so, um, but yeah, just that was the thing when I got into about 4 months ago now, I guess, when I got into it with Barbarossa and Native Blood Candy. Uh,
I recall that, yeah.
they when I knew that when I said I don't care about men, that was going to draw the ire of all these guys, right?
Yeah, I said that too, as I recall.
Yeah, and ultimately you don't, if all you care about is the truth, I mean, it's why do you have to care about a specific demographic of people too? I think that caring about the truth is enough to drive someone to fight feminism.
Well, it's going to bring me to my next point. We talk about, I'm sorry, feminism's wrongs. That points the way to the next discussion, which is the question of feminist guilt. And we need to start hammering upon the theme of feminist guilt because, oh boy, are they ever guilty. Feminism is guilty of a lot of things. Feminism has a lot to answer for. Feminism has introduced a lot of calamity and misery into the world and needs to be held accountable for it under the disinfecting sunlight of the world's gaze. So feminist guilt is something we need to highlight and bring to the forefront continually in our task, in our mission of our strict anti-feminist mission of working with information, information about feminist guilt. So through all of your talking, your writing, your speaking, whatever you do, you need to constantly draw the feminist connection. When you're talking about this, some terrible thing that was done to men or done to a particular man, in order to avoid sounding like it's the androcentric narrative voice, you have to continually make the feminist connection, continually draw the line of causation, the thread of guilt from that example that you're expanding upon back to the theme of feminism, the truth about feminism, the thing that feminists don't want to talk about. Because as I say, feminists don't like to talk about feminism. So you're constantly making the feminist connection. That helps to break feminism, and it helps to break the androcentric narrative voice because it's bringing the whole world into the narrative, and you're not just talking like some poor dude in the men's clubhouse. So that's that. Now another thing we need to do, we of the strict anti-feminist task force, anyone involved in this kind of information work, we need to, what a very powerful thing this is, to attack the structural node points in the feminist worldview. Such things as rape culture, male privilege, the domestic violence narrative, the wage gap, and on it goes. There are many more, but those are some of the big ones. Now, all of these things and more are the structural load-bearing points which prop up the weight of the feminist worldview. Just like in a house, you'll have certain walls in the house which are the bearing walls, which take the weight of the structure, and then there's other walls that don't hardly take any weight at all. Well, those are the structural load-bearing points. And in the structure of information, which is the feminist worldview, there are structural load-bearing points. And some of those things that I mentioned, those are your structural load-bearing points. And you got to hammer away at the structural load-bearing points with overwhelming and ferocious force until those points collapse, and then that in turn puts the structure in danger of collapse. It destabilizes the structure, makes it weak. And once you've done that, it doesn't take much of a push or a shove or a kick to get the whole thing crashing down. So attack the structural node points in the feminist worldview. Some of these things are easy. Things like rape culture, wage gap, male privilege, so on and so on and so on. If we bring overwhelming force to bear upon those ideas, those themes, we can do a lot of damage in those areas. And then we will put feminist house in danger of collapse from there. I mean, there's just so many ways we can do this if we just get our heads together and define the task and limit ourselves and practice these various kinds of wonderful disciplines. We can do a lot to break the feminist narrative and bring down the power of hegemonic feminism in civilization at large. Attack the structural load-bearing points. Those are the points which give the feminist worldview its structural integrity and keep it from collapsing in a heap. And when we hammer away at those node points, that's one of the best things we can do if we want to make the feminist worldview come crashing down by its own weight.
Well, and I think that one of the one of those primary load points is white knights.
Well, white knights, how so?
Because they're enablers of this stuff. They're the muscle, they're the foot soldiers, they're the ground troops of this stuff. A couple of the big experiences that I had that got me into this were one, living through a home invasion committed by entirely men on behalf of a woman. And another one, my friend got kicked out of his house because he made out with a guy's girlfriend, and they all decided that he got her drunk and took advantage of her. So it's and I think that a lot of the guys who they see it as their responsibility to just bend to any woman's childish caprices. Um, I think they can be if they can be dissuaded from doing that, then that would be taking care of one of the uh, major load bearing pillars right there.
Well, yeah, that is a possibility. I would be a little bit careful how I approach that. Um, I'd be cautious about using the term white knights and cursing the white knights, and um, I, I would approach it um, more as exposing the behavior of people um, without necessarily calling them white knights or anything like that.
Well, no, I mean I'm just saying that to, for the sake of shorthand. I mean you and I and all our listeners
Oh
know
yes, yes,
what a
absolutely.
white knight is.
Shorthand. Shorthand. Yes, I read that shorthand very well. Okay, well, this comes under one of the points we've laid out elsewhere in one of our catechisms. That is, expose the persistent behavior of feminism's participants. Okay, that's one of the things we do. We expose the persistent behavior of feminism's participants. And Nick, what you're describing comes under that heading very much. That is exposing the persistent behavior of feminism's participants. And a lot of that behavior seems to boil down to one thing. I could put it in one word: lying. Feminists sure do a hell of a lot of that. In fact, sometimes it seems like that's all they do. They are great rapers of the truth.
Yeah. I mean, they're so adept at twisting absolutely anything that happens. You
They
know,
have the agility of master sword fighters in that art. I'm
yeah,
in awe sometimes.
yeah, and it's shocking just how dishonest they are.
And don't forget that this gets into sword fighting the fart.
Yeah. Well, they're so dishonest. They're so dishonest that there's nothing of substance there to to really strike. That's I think that's sword fighting the part. There's nothing solid to grab onto.
Well, they are master um, flatulent sword fighters. They're very good at what they do. And you got to understand what they do and to be able to plan for it, to be able to successfully counteract what they're doing.
Well, yeah, actually, I'll correct myself. The one solid thing is their propensity for lying. And back in 2013 when we did our first slut walk, we went there with signs that said we loved sluts, and that's all we said. Nothing against feminism. It was just one simple, consistent, positive pro slut message. Because we knew that if it was we went there with the sign Men's Rights Edmonton, that we would be lied about maliciously. And then I
Didn't they
waited.
lie about you a bit anyway?
They did lie about us. That's the thing. We waited. We did something knowing that they would lie about us, and then we released proof that they were lying. That's
And it didn't make a dent on them, as I recall.
well, actually, you know, Brian Vanderhoek, they learned. It's cumulative. They learned not to, basically not to.
They learned to cover their ass, is what they did.
Yeah, well, they learned not to, if they're going to lie about me, not to do it out in public where everyone can hear. I mean, after a few after a few times of us exposing their lies, they started having uh, lectures telling everyone to not talk about us, not pay attention to us at all, because the whole lying about us thing didn't work. So yeah, just
Well,
constantly expose them as liars. Don't just call them liars. Like prove it, and it's
show that
easy.
they're liars. Show everybody why they are liars,
Yeah,
and point to their actual lies.
yeah. I mean, anytime you interact with them, they're going to lie about you to other people.
They will lie
So
about you to themselves. They will lie about you to you. They will lie
yeah,
about you every which way.
so just go do something, interact with them, like that in a way that is perfectly legit. It's not objectionable in any way.
Innocuous, yes.
And then they will, of course, take that. They will report. They will send a report that what you did was totally evil, and they'll make up crazy shit. And then once you have, and then you can show those same people the reality of the situation. I mean, that didn't happen. They lied. They straight up lied. And if you do
Yes.
that, if you do that enough times, a lot of people are noticing feminists and social justice warriors just constantly lie. And I don't think we're capitalizing on that nearly enough.
We could always capitalize on it more. Yes, we can invest more into that. And that's why we have the strict anti-feminist task force to really zero in on those kinds of specializations. If we're going to bring down feminism, we ought to get serious about it. And while we're bringing down feminism, we're going to pull down a good portion of the social justice warrior community as well. A collapse in one house will be felt in the other. Well, really, they are the same house, pretty much. Different wings of the same house. All right, we have eaten up close to, looks like 3/4 of our 2 hours here. I don't think we're going to get through all of these links that I put up to talk about. Let's see what we got here. We got something here about women rallying to the cause of men in India. We have something about the Kathy Young protest goings on in Toronto. We have something about the new UN rumblings about cyber violence. And we got something about women are wonderful leaders by a blog called Purple Motes, and something about Chrissy Hind, whom you may have heard about, the singer who came out and talked about how she was raped when she was young and how it was somewhat her fault, as she put it. Nick, you're Canadian. What do you think? Should we talk about the Toronto Kathy Young thing?
I would love to. I would love that.
I'm trying to pick out. We
I'd
don't
love
have to
to.
go in order here. Okay, let's do that because we're not going to get all of these. We can roll some of these over into a later episode. This will be cue number 2 from the Toronto Sun. Let me copy and paste this link into a Chrome tab. Yeah, there's some important stuff going on in Toronto. Not just Toronto, it's spread over to Ottawa as well just recently. Nick, have you seen that video that Steve Brule did from Ottawa?
Yes, I did, and I'm pretty sure I recognize at least one of those protesters despite the mask.
Somebody you saw in real life when you were in Toronto, maybe?
No, no, someone from another one of the someone from the another one of the protests that they had
Okay.
back in 2013, I believe.
Well, those people are a cadre of professional protesters. They're not all college students, by the way, in case anybody's interested. They're young. They look like college students, but some of them may be college students. A lot of them are not. A lot of them are just professional radical socialists and social justice warriors and whatnot. Um, so here's this thing from the Toronto Sun. Um, yeah, there was this, to put this in a nutshell, somebody posted threats, anti-feminist threats on a blog called BlogTO in Toronto. Somebody called, I think they went by the username Death to Feminists. And I suspect, I am almost certain in my own mind that some feminist did that. It's totally consistent with their behavior. This is what they do. They do stuff like this. They've done it before. Why would they not do it again? Why would they not be doing it now? They lie. They fabricate stuff. This is just their modus operandi. So let's dig into this article here. Gender issues, speech balanced, informative. And I think this is from somebody who's sympathetic. Let's see.
Well,
Toronto.
it's
Yes.
it's the Toronto Sun that that's from, and the Sun is kind of conservative, kind of right wing, but they still have like feminists writing for them. I
Mm-hmm.
just flipped through it yesterday and saw that some feminist was talking about how female genital mutilation isn't a woman's issue, it's everyone's issue, blah blah blah.
Well, anyway, yeah, sort of center right maybe. Toronto, when you look at the way feminists have responded to men's issues, it's a pretty bad record, said American journalist Kathy Young at a controversial event in Toronto Thursday night. Okay, there you go. Kathy Young is the person they wanted to keep out of their campus. Uh, Judging by what she just said about feminism, I guess if I were a feminist, I would probably want to keep Kathy Young the hell away also. A movement that was once about equality seems to have transformed in strange ways. No, it hasn't transformed in strange ways. It's been the same way right from the get-go. Come on, knock it off. A movement that was once about equality seems to have transformed in strange ways. Its excesses amplified by the internet and campus theatrics. Those excesses and campus theatrics were always there before the internet came along. I hate it when people rewrite history or just don't know history. It's sad that I even need to describe Young's talk entitled The Politics of Gender and Victimhood as controversial. Bing, 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 bing. There you go. It's sad that you have to describe this as controversial. I agree. It is sad that you have to describe it as controversial. Young, whose writing has appeared in the New York Times, Daily Beast, Reason, and more, was initially a feminist when she arrived in the U.S. from the USSR in 1980. But after following the movement, questions arose, and now she's a critic. Her engaging and fact-based speech was a far cry from the angry, misogynist, chest-thumping men's rights shindig that opponents of similar events on campus have tried to label them. Well, none of those events were chest-thumping, men's rights, misogynistic shindigs. I mean, Warren Farrell, Nathanson and Young, Janice Fiamengo, come on, where was the chest-thumping misogyny in any of that? Okay. Young's overview of the current state of feminism in our culture mostly touched on online harassment and the elusive, quote-unquote, rape culture phenomenon. She looked at the statistics surrounding online abuse and harassment of men and women and found them more or less equal. That's what I've always heard. I totally do not believe this talk about online harassment of women. It's not a problem. Yeah, does it happen? Sure, it happens. Is it a crisis? No. It's a manufactured crisis, manufactured by the feminists. She looked at the statistics surrounding online abuse and harassment of men and women and found them more or less equal. The internet isn't the cesspool of misogyny many activists would have us believe. Or if it is, men have it just as rough. Bingo, there you go. Men have it just as rough. Women are not oppressed. Men have it just as rough in most areas. Overall, if you stack up the misery pile for women and you stack up the misery pile for men in this life, you would find those piles to be about equal. Okay, you can't say women are oppressed if you look over on the male side and see that men are equally oppressed and equally miserable. The narrative about the oppression of women just doesn't stand up very well. It looks hypocritical and self-serving. And it's only by ignoring the male side of things that you can boost feminism at all. And this is what feminism does. And of course, to make all that happen, you have to play games with the truth a lot. Lie, in other words. You got to lie. Okay, the internet isn't a cesspool of misogyny many activists would have us believe, or if it is, men have it just as rough. Okay, we read that. She delves into the stories about rape culture at high schools and universities, for which there is no good case, pointing out cases where teenage boys are sexually assaulted and raped, but there's no media outcry like there is for a female victim. Okay, there's male disposability for you and anti-male bias. She notes that the Center for Disease Control in tallying rape statistics includes otherwise consensual encounters if intoxication is involved. So drunk sex between partners inflates rape numbers. Yeah, by definition, sex under the influence of alcohol is rape. If he's drunk and she's not, is it rape there? I don't think it is. If they're both drunk, then it's two-way rape. Two people had sex with each other against their will. You had one person who didn't want to have sex and another person who didn't want to have sex, but they went ahead and had sex unwillingly with each other. I guess that is what, two-way rape? I don't know. It's a tangled web we weave here. I'm not calling here for more male victimhood, Young concluded, pointing out today's victimhood Olympics that too many people seem to be competing in. We need to recognize genuine victimization when it occurs regardless of gender, while at the same time discouraging a victimhood mentality. Now, that statement about the victimhood Olympics that too many people seem to be competing in, well, let's not forget who started that. Yeah, we didn't start that. The feminists started that. Non-feminist people weren't playing that game originally back in the day. Feminism got that ball rolling, and other people jumped in to the game later just out of sheer self-defense. It was like, play that game, or get run over. It's an empowering notion. But for some people, even probing the validity of rape statistics and separating exaggeration from genuine victimization is a no-go. It makes you a rape apologist, as one of the signs held by a protester at an event read before the group of 5 were escorted out by police. I've never understood that that expression, rape apologist. Are you apologizing for rape? Well, no, that's not what it means. A rape apologist means something more like rape justificationist. It's like the word apologetics, like, you know, defending or justifying something. So a rape apologist is somebody who defends or justifies rape. And in just about every case where a feminist uses the word rape apologist, there is no proof that anybody has been defending or justifying rape. So it means something different in the feminist lexicon.
It's really no different from calling your opponent a child molester or a rapist or something like that. It's just a vile slander.
It's a slur. Yes, and this is the persistent behavior of feminism's participants that we need to call out, that we need to spotlight and make clear to the world. It's, well, more lying, really. You know, calling somebody a misogynist. It doesn't mean you're actually a misogynist. Okay, it's somewhat more sophisticated than a monkey throwing shit, but only somewhat. That's the way human monkeys throw shit at each other. Actual monkeys throw actual shit at each other, but humans throw metaphorical shit at each other. And when a feminist calls you a misogynist, what you're looking at is a monkey flinging a turd at you. It's not about truth. But boy, that M word is an M bomb. It really is effective, and they're milking it for all it's worth. It makes you a rape apologist, as one of the signs held by a protester at an event read before the group of 5 were escorted out by police. The organizer, the Canadian Association for Equality, a group that describes their focus as the status, health, and well-being of boys and men, was happy for the protesters to stay if they paid the entrance fee. But, as protester Emily said, we weren't willing to pay the money to support this group. So they had a speaker in there, Kathy Young, who was breaking the feminist narrative. I guess you're a rape apologist if you break the feminist narrative. Well, they don't like to have their narrative broken. I can't say I blame them, naturally. I mean, if I was a feminist, I'm sure I wouldn't like to have my narrative broken. But there is a certain eminent domain of history here. I mean, the feminist narrative must be broken. We got to break that feminist narrative, and we will. And they can kick and scream about it all they want. We must break the feminist narrative. We must sink the feminism. Most of the people in there have no lived experience. Really? No lived experience? They've been living all their lives and they have no lived experience? Okay, let's go on, said protester Brandon in explaining their opposition. He added, this is more like a NASCAR rally, presumably referring to how the crowd was largely male and not all of them dressed for a night at the opera. Some snobbery, that. Yes, Brandon, upper middle class much? Sonny boy, upper middle class much? Bourgeoisie much? More like a NASCAR rally. Okay, these are progressive social justice people, and they are acting like the fucking bourgeoisie. I mean, some revolutionary. Okay, some that. Nick, anything you want to say about that? I know you got something to say about that.
Yeah, well, I used to hang out with these people, the Edmonton chapter of them, and yeah, if they met, like they here in Edmonton, they've come together under the Wobbly, the Industrial Workers of the World, which, you know, back in the beginning of the 20th century were.
Back in the beginning of the 20th century, it was made of real, actual lumberjacks.
Yeah, I mean, but these people mostly work in like retail jobs. I had a friend suggest that that they call themselves retail workers of the world as opposed to industrial workers of the world. Um, and I had another coworker who actually is a commie, and he's also pretty social justice himself. He doesn't talk to me now that I do my anti-feminist stuff. But back when we did talk, he said that they should call themselves, or that they were basically a historical recreation society.
Historical Recreation Society. Recreation Society.
Yeah, sorry, recreation, not recreation. And
Maybe those people have calluses on their hands like the original Wobblies must have had.
yeah, I sincerely doubt it.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, I knew years ago that if if they were ever to come face to face with the working man that they claim to represent, then they would call him racist and sexist and homophobic. Or say that like they're doing here. They're saying, oh, these people are it's like a NASCAR rally. I mean, the people who go to NASCAR rallies are the working class.
Right. I don't go to NASCAR rallies, by the way.
Well, but neither do I.
Yeah.
Well, I don't think it's a lot of hoity-toity people going to NASCAR rallies. I think it's a lot of tradesmen.
I don't want anybody to think I'm a hoity-toity person just because I have no taste for NASCAR rallies.
Yeah, there's different kinds of working class.
Yeah, there's different kinds of hoity-toity.
Yeah.
Pick your poison. Oh well. I think we're getting to the end of the article here. Some snobbery that, says the author of the article. The event even had to be relocated to a downtown Toronto hotel from its original location on the University of Toronto campus, lest it offend the delicate sensibilities of feminists on campus. Yes, the hotel where they relocated the event to was, I think, directly across the street from the campus. So it wasn't that much of a relocation. Not any great inconvenience for anybody who might have gone there, which is good. I hope the next time they have one of these things, they stick to their guns and damn well put it on the campus. And damn the torpedoes, hell or high water. I hope they do that the next time. And, invite those idiots to do their worst so we can capture it on video. Okay, exposing the persistent behavior of feminism's participants. But these troubles were nothing compared to the large and angry crowds that tried to stop former feminists turned critics Warren Farrell and Janice Fiamengo from speaking at similar events in previous years. By the way, everybody, every Thursday of every week, be sure to catch Janice Fiamengo's YouTubes on Stephen Brulet's YouTube channel. They're great. I look forward to every Thursday of every week to see what Janice Fiamengo is going to put up next. A bit of advice to those so afraid of Young. Put down the placards and the rhetoric and read her informative work. And that is the end of the article. So yeah, this stuff in Toronto is interesting. Nick, I think what we have here is a case of the ebb and flow that you and I have talked about so much. We've had the ebb, and now the flow is starting to creep back again, because these people, they can't stay in ebb mode forever. Sooner or later, the emotional pressure is just too much for them to bear, and they have to vent. They have to come out and manifest in some way.
Yeah, but you said this is the ebb or this is the flow?
This would be the flow. The flow is where they become active and energetic. The ebb is where things go into a down cycle.
Well, what a lot of people have been noticing is that the flow isn't flowing so strong these days. I mean,
I've noticed that too. Yes.
In Toronto, they had there was about, what was it, 5 of them?
I don't know what the numbers was in Toronto, but looking at that video in Ottawa, I would say it was around 15.
Yeah, I did a count. It was about 13 to 15 of them. And I mean, they were they were, yeah. There's very few of them. Not a lot of people. And here this year the slut walk here in Edmonton had maybe not even half of the people that we had last year.
But let's remember it was a very hot summer day there, and a lot of them didn't want to turn out. But
Yeah, it was pretty hot the last time too.
okay, maybe that wasn't a factor then. I was speculating. But it seems to me that something like, for example, the slut walk, um, it's kind of a faddish thing. I mean, eventually, like all fads, it's going to go through its life cycle and run out. And maybe
But
the slut walk is on its down cycle now. We'll see.
well, it's not just a fad. I mean, if the rape culture thing is a fad, it's they're pushing it more and more online and in articles and things like that. Just in the last 6 months, they've been really laying that on pretty thick. And you would think that given that feminism is falling into such disrepute online, it doesn't seem that like it would be a fad. Showing up is a show of solidarity. There are a bunch of feminists
Well,
who
okay. I'm
feminists.
using the word fad a bit loosely there, I admit. But I mean, if you just look at something like the slut walk just in itself, I mean, it's the kind of thing that's likely to have a life cycle. It's likely to reach a peak and then go into decline. Unless you think that the slut walk's going to be a permanent social institution that's going to go on for decades, and that I find questionable.
Yeah, well, I don't know if they'll go on for decades. I mean, Take Back the Night has been going on for decades, but the like when you look at slut walks in cities other than Edmonton, they're pretty packed, right?
I haven't been keeping up on the slut walk statistics, and attendance numbers. I have to admit, but yeah, they are. Generally speaking, I agree with what you're saying, Nick. They're starting to double down on all of their usual tactics. And to me, it seems like they're doing this out of desperation. I mean, there's a reason why they're turning the heat up and why they're doing it now.
Yeah, it's just like well, they're reassuring themselves. They're desperately trying to reassure their followers
That
that they
everything's
are.
okay. It's going to be all right.
Yeah, yeah. Like a couple of when they had that rape culture uh, talk here in Edmonton with Lise Gattel and Staff Sergeant Shauna Grimes um, and Ryan Jesperson. There was a point there where what's her name? Where Lise Gattel, she reassures everyone this is just a little backlash that we're experiencing right now.
Oh, backlash meaning what? Meaning the activity of Nick Redding, among other things.
Well, Men's Rights Edmonton and AVFM and all the online criticisms of feminism. It's just a little backlash, nothing to worry about.
Well, no, it's part of a growing and ongoing trend. I mean, even I can see that, and I don't have near as many letters after my name as Lise Gotel does. Anyway, so yeah, I mean, feminism is feeling the heat. The feminists are feeling the heat. They know that more and more people, well, the non-feminist sector is becoming activated, and they know it. They feel it. They're feeling the heat. The nice thing about heat is that it rises, same as flame, same as fire. Fire climbs, heat rises. Right now, we see them barricading themselves into their institutional strong points, their little fortresses. They've got a power hold, a power lock on a number of political and social institutions. And they've got communities that are well dug in. And I'm beginning to sense a certain siege mentality on the part of these people. But especially the ones that are in the higher institutions like academia and so on. Heat rises, the heat from the street rises through the institutional power totem pole at some point. More and more of your own people start becoming active within the institutional structure, which means that the enemy, who is also within the institutional structure, will begin to feel that influence at some point. So part of the anti-feminist task force, then, it's like, if you'll pardon the expression, it's like the perfect crime. You got to have the inside guy and the outside guy. It's an inside-outside job. So, we have people that are outside, the common rabble, agitating, working with information, rallying people in various ways. Now, whether it's around anti-feminism or whether it's around men's rights or in some other way. And then at the same time, we have a slow trickle of our people getting into the institutional structures and working their way up. And it's not all necessarily infiltration when you consider that a lot of those people are already there. They're already there. They've always been there. They're like sleepers who are waking up, and they realize, hey, there's something going on here. I can be a part of this. I'm going to do what I can do from right here where I sit. I can pick up the phone and call somebody and make this thing happen. I can do this. I can do that. They're beginning to realize the possibilities of their own position. From where they sit, they can do X, Y, and Z that will help with the cause. And the secret here of the strict anti-feminist task force is to get our people in all of these different sectors. The activated non-feminist sector grows more and more richly networked and I don't know, what shall we say, manifold. That's the model toward which we need to be working. Anyway, we got about 6 minutes left here before we're out of time and you hit the brick wall of death. We're not going to read any of those articles, but at least I did read, I believe that was Q number 2. Anyway, it's a story from the Toronto Sun. We had a good episode. I'm sorry, Nick, you couldn't make it in earlier, but I think I kept it covered pretty well. And we talked about some interesting things. I hope it's been enjoyable for our listeners. And Nick, anything you want to say? Final words? Famous last words?
Yeah, just as usual, I would encourage people to check out my website, mensrightsedmonton.com. Follow me on Twitter at mensrightsid. Check out my YouTube channel, mensrightsedmonton. If anybody is opposed to feminism or pro-male, not the two are all that distinguishable from each other.
If you're any kind of a critical non-feminist, go talk to Nick.
yeah. Drop me a line, and we should hang out here in Edmonton. That's about it.
All right. Well, everybody, let's start winding it down now. Hopefully, I will be back again next week. I will not have to go off of the internet. I think there's a chance that maybe I will be back next week. It's looking better. The possibility, is looking better than it was. So you'll know next week on episode 65. If not, Nick, you say you're going to carry the torch.
Yes, I am. I'm gonna grab some. I'm gonna see if I can get some good guest hosts to come on.
All right. Yeah, we need to get more guests on this. Anyway, so everybody, remember, what do I always say at the end of the show, Nick? Can you refresh my memory?
Feminism is what we say it is.
Yes, thank you, Nick. Thank you. Feminism is what we say it is. We define feminism, not the dictionary. We do. We the people. We the non-feminist people. We're not feminist. We have to put up with feminism every day of our lives. We have to deal with the effect that feminism has upon our world. I think we have some say in saying what the hell feminism is. And as I said earlier, you know how feminists are. They don't want to talk about feminism. They'll do anything to avoid talking about feminism. And that includes telling you what feminism is. When they tell you what feminism is out of their mouth, they're not telling you what feminism is. They are avoiding the subject of feminism. Because the only way to talk about feminism is to tell the truth about feminism. And if you're not telling the truth about feminism, then you're not really talking about feminism. You're talking about something else meant to lead people astray. So, email address. Send your love mail and your hate mail and your mail to Vanguard Report at USA.com. Pretty spiffy address, eh? Vanguard Report, one word, Vanguard Report at USA.com. That's it. And with that, we wrap up episode number 64 of the Vanguard Report. Feminism is what we say it is. Everybody, take care, party on, be excellent to each other. See you next week. Ciao.